When the surprise of finding even more clones has passed, recovering them back to the fleet turned out to be easy. For a reason only they understood, 200 clone soldiers viewed Varuna as their superior, so all she had to do was to give them the order, and her new subordinates were ready for departure within minutes. With the rest of the station already looted of every valuable object the scavengers could find, Counter Logistics was able to leave quickly, and focus on figuring out just who their new marines were, and what they were doing here. Unfortunately, finding answers proved to be a bit more problematic than everyone expected. "They don't know anything, boss," Varuna said over the comm few hours later, during regular officer roll call. "We tried talking with all of them, but it looks like Domain kept them completely in the dark about everything. The only tangible thing I learned from these troopers is that they were manufactured in Orbital Facility S-23 and were sent out for their very first mission. They don't even know what mission was that supposed to be though. Apparently they were supposed to receive orders after they woke up from cryo, which means right now they think they're still on Domain payroll." "Did you try to explain them the real situation?" Mr. Cart asked. "Aye, but they just look at me blankly and say, 'It's not our duty to question.' We won't learn anything about the Domain from them. The only thing they talk about is military stuff." "And they're shit at that too," House interjected. "Asked some of them how they'd react if someone attacked them right there and then, and their responses just boil down to 'face target frontally.' They just recite lines from some manual someone drilled into them without any thought. Feels like they just march forward in a line like Ancient did in those old holovids." "Clearly, they were not made with survivability in mind," Varuna said coldly. "Then what's the point of making them in the first place, unless Domain people really were just as dumb as they were rich? It's like this entire unit is just a fire-and-forget kind of weapon, trained and then set out without any actual experience. And they're armed weirdly too. No heavy equipment, barely any explosives, very limited ammo. The only thing that stands out about them is the amount of flamethrowers. Every 1 in 5 has one. Mean ones too, not just some rusty fuel-powered ones we sometimes use, but proper plasma throwers. Could probably melt that station we found them on in a matter of hours." "Maybe that was what they were sent there to do," Mr. Cart wondered. Place had no weapons outside and just a token defenses on the inside, so a bunch of flamethrowers could burn out whoever was inside easily. "Could be. All Domain emblems were sprayed over. Maybe they were some kind of pacification team, sent in to bring it back into the fold. But if that's the case, then damn, Domain really didn't want any survivors down there." "Sounds a bit more like something Tritakian would do," Varuna said. "Happens sometimes. An outpost crew has second thoughts about doing something less than ethical, but the facility in question is too important to just blow it up. In that case, they just send burner crews like this one, or ones equipped with chemical weapons to clear the place out." And that clearly was a joint domain tritaxation, so you may be onto something. And it would explain why they reacted to your armor and decided to follow your orders. Do try to not let them know you're actually on a Tritac fugitive list yourself. Last thing we need is for our 200 new friends to chase you around the ship with all their fire-belching toys. "Assuming we'll even be able to keep them awake? Dr. Disco, did you have the time to check them out? Should we be worried about their physical states, aside from mental one?" "Not in the slightest," the doctor replied over the comm, and you could hear a lot of activity in the background. Disco's medical team were dejected when they found colonizer clones in extremely bad shape, but these military ones were on completely opposite end of the spectrum. The doctor was more than happy to examine them. "I doubt their lifespan can be counted in decades, but at least they're not melting right in front of our eyes. And no wonder, they're made to be damn near unkillable. They may look like the colonizers outside, but inside everything is leagues better. Redundant organs, higher bone and muscle density, ability to filter out toxins without use of any outside equipment. Those are very well made, and, as Captain House said, very inexperienced soldiers. So, I guess everyone's in favor of letting them stay." "And what's the alternative, boss?" Varuna asked. "Their cryopods are way too large to bring back, and we can't really let them go alone anywhere. They'd end up dead or hurt someone before the end of the week." Very well then. In that case, Lieutenant, since they already recognize you as authority, you're in charge of them. Get a few people who know how to spell empathy and try to ease them into this new world, though I doubt they'd accept whatever you say if it's not in line with what they were conditioned with. And keep in mind that we'll have to monitor their status constantly, miss, Disco added. Clones like these probably require regular medical checkups, not to mention their large bodies no doubt require a lot of energy. We may want to bump up our nutrient paste fabricators, Commander. Ugh, I wouldn't force a full nutrient paste diet on my worst enemy. Next time we're back at port we need to buy some normal food. More of it, that is. They may not be humans, but we can at least feed them like they are, Mr. Cart said, and Varuna nodded approvingly to that. Then, when the meeting ended and the fleet returned to work, the bossman asked Midnight Dissonant if she knew anything about these clones, but the AI wasn't helpful, not with her core unit and most memories still missing. She offered one piece of advice though, to never bring those clones anywhere close to Tritakian officials, where they could decide to switch loyalties. But aside from that, the only thing left to do for Cart Logistics now was to get back to work, for their academy contracts were still waiting. The next thing on the list was recovery of some kind of device from a probe orbiting a star a few light years away. But when the fleet reached its destination, everyone realized that the probe was not as accessible as they expected. It was indeed orbiting the blue star like specified in the contract, but no one said that it would be so close to it, within the scorching hot corona of gases ejected by the sun. Now, this recovery wasn't exactly impossible to pull off, but after preparing for a few hours, everyone accepted that it was not going to be a pleasant time. In reality, it turned into 12 nightmarish hours of system failures and oppressive heat, with temperatures in all ships rising well above 60 degrees Celsius, knocking several of their less heat-resistant crew members unconscious. One desperate Luddite tried to take a dip in a vat of reactor coolant and had to be rushed off to Dr. Disco's room to treat her for burns, frostbite and severe radiation poisoning. What's worse, when the fleet finally reached the probe, the salvagers found it already busted open.
Captain, the device we were sent to find is not here,
House said from the probe, as his life support whirred desperately to keep his broken body alive in all this heat. Mr. Cart and Dr. Disco warned him beforehand, but he was determined to go. Said he wouldn't send his salvagers somewhere he wouldn't go himself.
We did find something else inside, though.
He shifted his helmet camera to show gutted insides of the probe. Whoever opened it up before wasn't even trying to be subtle. But right there, in the middle of a steel bulkhead, was a man in a spacesuit, quite literally nailed to the wall with a massive spike that went through his gut. Chaotic markings on this man's suit and helmet clearly marked him as House would say, a gentleman of fortune. Everyone ignored the pirate at first, thinking he was dead, until he suddenly started moving and coughing violently, trying hopelessly to unpin himself from the wall. House, you won't find anything else there, but this man may know where the Academy device is, Mr. Cart said. Try to bring him back alive so we can question him.
You sure about that, Captain? The pirate said. It's not common to leave someone stranded like this, so this guy's probably a complete dickhead. We bring him aboard and might bite us in the ass later.
Yes, which is why we now have 200 new, eager, heavily armed crewmates who can keep an eye out for him. Now bring him back before you boil to death out there.
Aye, but I'm pretty sure I recognize some of those markings he has, so I think I should be the one asking him questions once he wakes up.
That's the plan, House, but he has to wake up for that, so be gentle with him. And for Star's sake, hurry up, I'm melting alive here. It took another hours for the salvagers to go back, during which the heat fried up a few more subsystems and knocked out a few more crew members around the fleet, and another 3 to finally escape the scorching corona of the sun. Everyone welcomed inhospitable, freezing cold of deep space with relief, and by the end of the day Dr. Disco said their patient has woken up. Fortunately for the pirate, whoever nailed him to the wall didn't fire the spike through any important organ, and while he'd probably limp for the rest of his life, the man should make a decent recovery. He was fed, offered a drink and change of clothes, and expressed immense gratitude to his saviors, and then Captain House went to see him to ask his questions, and the survivor's outlook on life changed dramatically. When House called Mr. Card back an hour later, the man looked worse than when he was still nailed to the wall.
"Good news, Captain. Our new friend was very forthcoming with information," the old pirate began, smiling brightly. "Eventually, that is. Believe it or not, even though his mates decided to leave him in his deadly predicament, he wanted to remain loyal to them and don't sell them out. Found his loyalty admirable, so I decided to reward it."
"You call that a reward?" the survivor said weakly, his speech slurred somewhat due to several missing teeth. His face was swollen.
"Of course, boy."
House turned to him, still with a smile, but his one organic eye was glowing ominously.
"You still have your fingers, don't you? If I was punishing you, they'd be all over this room or out the nearest airlock, probably with your hands still attached to them."
"Bloody hell, House, you didn't have to go that far," Mr. Card said from the screen, slightly terrified. Not for the first time, he wondered just what would happen if the old pirate suddenly decided to stop following his orders. "We just needed to know where his mates went with the Academy device."
"Yes, and this here clever boy tried to send us on a wild and pointless goose chase. Besides, he could have been left there as a bait. Seen things like that before. Leave someone to be rescued only for the survivor to lead their rescuers right into a pirate ambush. Had to be sure we're not flying straight into a dead zone."
"And are we?"
"Nope. As I said, this cheeky monkey tried to send us into some empty system at the edge of the sector, but he reconsidered his words and told me exactly where his former friends went. He even was kind enough to share exactly who leads them. And would you believe it, I think recovering that device will be easier than we expected."
"Someone you know, I take it?"
"Oh yes, an old crewmate of mine, back from old days of working for Kanta. Should be a piece of cake, just don't let this little bugger here contact her beforehand. Maybe we should bring him back to that wreck we found him in, nail him back to the wall, just to be sure."
"That won't be necessary, Captain, thank you," Mr. Card said weakly. "I'm sure our new crewmate will not do anything to cause us any trouble. Now, I apologize for Captain House's eagerness, mister." "Eagerness?" the survivor said through gritted teeth. "I heard about this man. If anything, that was very tame of him." In the corner, House smiled bashfully, like a shy teenager who just received a compliment. "So I've heard. But regardless, you're stuck with us for a while, at least until we're back to civilized space. I won't lock you up, though. Always plenty of things to do around the fleet, so we'll find something to keep you occupied with. Consider yourself temporarily hired until then. I'll wire the first payment within next hour. And hey, maybe once we're back in the core world, you'll decide to stay with us. The way it looks, your former mates weren't exactly treating you all that well." They just decided they'd get more of their share for recovering the artifact if they got rid of me. Should have seen this coming," the survivor said, as if it was the most obvious and normal thing in existence. And sadly, in Persian sector, loyalties and friendships rarely survived situations where money was involved. But just as the battered pirate began to talk again, his eyes suddenly glistened with realization. "I might take you up on your offer, but... Wait, no. Hell no. The House is here. A boss who only talks over the comm. There was this weird Pather lady who gave me a creepy look when they were dragging me here. You're the Ghost Fleet! Holy shit, you're real!" "Ghost Fleet?" Mr. Cart raised a questioning eyebrow under the helmet. Next to him, Varuna shook her head. She had no idea what this man was talking about either. "Does that mean people out there in the sector know about us?" "Hell yeah they do," the survivor said, nervous again. "You're smugglers who work with anyone as long as they pay good. Heard Hegemony Admiralty itself has a harden for you for all these times you escaped their patrols. Heard some crews back home talking that you rock some secret Tritac technology to go under everyone's radar." "That's not good," Mr. Cart said. If you're a smuggler with a reputation, it means you're doing something wrong. And then there's all the creepy shit people talk about you, the survivor continued. Like all those mercs who were sent to bring you in and got murdered in deep space. Wait, what? We didn't kill any mercenaries. Hell, this fleet can barely fight. Yeah, that's what you want others to think, don't ya? The survivor gave Mr. Cart a knowing look. But Hegemony contracted 3 mercenary fleets to track you down, 50 ships in total, and out of those fleets 2 just disappeared completely, and 1 came back with just 2 ships and barely any crew. Those who came back said you jumped them in hyperspace with like 100 vessels from all directions. Only like 10 ships barely got out with their lives, and then they got jumped on their way back by those hyperspace ghosts who shut down all their life support. Only 2 shuttles made it back. The way I hear it, those who survived don't even want to leave gravity wells of their planets anymore. Let me guess, you only bring those cargo rust buckets to the core systems, but you have the rest of your fleet waiting in the outer rim. So yeah, I'd want to join ya. You're a fucking legend. Back in Mr. Cart's quarters, there was a moment of consternation. Everyone knew the fleet didn't actually attack and kill any mercenaries, but the rest of the sector seemed to think so, which was horrible for business. Of course, it meant that bottom feeders would probably stay away from them, solely thanks to their reputation, but other, far more competent and dangerous hunters and competitors would show up. And that wouldn't be a problem if Cart Logistics actually had a war fleet hidden somewhere, but it still was just a collection of old cargo rigs and a few old escort vessels. Reputation and infamy was the last thing they needed. Alright, did anyone hear anything about that? Mr. Cart asked his officers over the comm after ending his talk with the survivor. And if yes, then why the hell wasn't I informed? Heard some rumors last time I was in the bar, but I thought those were just drunken spacer stories, Zala said. Then again, some of my crewmates did mention that others were acting a bit weird when I told them they were flying with Cart Logistics. I heard about mercs being hired to track us down, but never thought the Admiralty itself hired them, Disco added. Then next time you hear something like that, make sure to let me know, damn it. Our entire job relies us on moving under the radar of big nations. We can't mess with governments, not if we want to live. God damn it, we're going to have to disappear and wait for this mess to blow over. He flicked the switch on the comm. All crews, new orders. From now on, no embracing of our reputation is allowed, savvy? No bumming free drinks and bars because you work for mysterious Cart Logistics. For all intents and purposes, that company is gone. Anyone who asks who you work for, you tell them that you mine asteroid belts for your weird uncle from Asharu or something like that. No exceptions. Any business talk goes through me, Varuna, Zala, House, or Disco. House, Varuna, enforce it. Message over. A collective groan of disappointment rumbled across the fleet, as crewmates realized getting cheap drinks would be a lot more difficult now. But then again, with 2 of the most dangerous people in the fleet assigned to keep the rules, no one would even dare to try and break them, or even complain too much. The boss, however, did not care about their grumbling. Instead, he switched comms to a secret private channel. "Midnight," he said sternly. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about those missing mercenaries, wouldn't you?" The computer was silent for a few moments until she finally spoke up. And even though her tone was emotionless as always, one could almost hear a bit of embarrassment there.
"These mercenaries were not under orders to bring the fleet or its crewmates back alive, Pilot Cart,"
she said, while the boss and Varuna both facepalmed in unison.
"As such, our consensus decided to ensure our safety by any means necessary. We have tried to waylay them at first, but they have proven to be very determined, so we have sent our subsumed fleet to discourage any pursuit. That didn't work either. The reward for eliminating us must have been significant."
"And now is going to be even bloody higher," Mr. Cart said, feeling his patience running out. "Why didn't you just say anything about this? If anyone learns that bloody remnant warships are protecting us, we're going to end up on the run from every single navy, mercenary and bounty hunter in the sector. We're not fighters, we're a transport company. And we rely on everyone thinking about us as of a transport company."
Understood. However, our safety remains a priority. We can't fulfill our plans if we are dead.
Precisely, which is why we hide and do our business without attracting any attention. You damn well know who we have here. If word really gets out about us, we're dead. So from now on, keep your damn strike fleet away from human ships, even if they are coming straight to hunt us down. Let me worry about evading them. I've been managing that decently so far.
Acknowledged. We apologize for any inconvenience our actions might have caused.
It's not just inconvenience, Midnight. Those fleets you destroyed had people in them, people who are now dead and who could have still been alive if you just let me do my thing. I don't want all this blood on my hands. Never again, you hear me? And by the way, were your ships also pretending to be those hyperspace ghosts that jumped survivors of that last fleet?
Negative. We are unable to reach speeds like ones reported by those surviving mercenaries. These must have been genuine hyperspace life forms.
Great. Another fucking mystery on our hands. Maybe the Academy will finally explain what the hell is going on here once we bring them back their toys, because it seems that they're attracting those things somehow. And on that note, let's get back to it. Navigation punched in coordinates house extracted from our new friend in the brig. But keep an eye on the sensors, we still may be flying into an ambush out there. Fortunately for the company, the trip turned out to be a peaceful one. Their new rescued crewmate was under constant supervision, but didn't once try to do anything suspicious. He just stayed in his cabin, hounded occasionally by House, who often woke him up in the middle of the night shift to run some pointless errand, claiming that a tired pirate wouldn't even try to do anything smart. The man also spent few days in Dr. Disco's office, trying to get his broken fingers straightened up and his bashed-out teeth replaced. The doctor performed every procedure dutifully, even though the man wasn't technically a crewmate, and refused any payment for it. Eventually, however, the survivor was locked up in the brig again, because the company reached the system where he pointed them to, one where his mates used to regroup and stash their cargo before returning to civilization. For a while, everyone thought it would be difficult to find the scavengers, but after a few days of flying around, and finding a very interesting frozen planet with a still working terraforming drone crashed on the surface, a large group of vessels was spotted on long-range sensors. They were not even trying to hide, clearly expecting no visitors in this remote corner of the sector. There was some discussion on how to approach them. Would it be a good idea to just fly straight towards them and open up the comms, or maybe some other, more cunning method would be required? Eventually, Mr. Carter decided to just turn off their signature jammer and see how the raiders would react, and, just as expected, the moment they spotted a small fleet of mostly civilian vessels, all pirate rust buckets fired up their engines and rushed towards Cat Logistics, expecting an easy victim. And in an open fight, they would no doubt win. Their ships were old and battered, sure, just like most of the vessels in the sector, but they were clearly rugged and modified for combat, which was precisely why Mr. Carter decided to not wait for them. Instead, he directed his fleet into a nearby gas cloud, turned on the signature jammer again, and disappeared. Now they could see the pirates, but the pirates could not see them. And after a few hours of searching through the gas cloud, it was clear that the raiders were losing both their patience and their nerve. Their fleet started moving erratically, trying to both find what they thought was an easy prey, while also staying together for safety. House said to let them stew like that for half a day, and then, when he deemed them sufficiently softened, he picked up the comm. Of course, everyone wondered just how he'd convince the pirates to even pick up, but he just told them to trust him and transferred a set of old codes. A few moments later, a face of a young woman, her hair dyed white, appeared on the screen, and human half of House's face grinned triumphantly.
"Hello, Shannon,"
he said, and the girl on the screen literally jumped back, as if someone handed her a live grenade.
"What the fuck?"
she started, eyes wide.
"You! It's enough I already have nightmares about you. The fuck you want now? Is this about the last time?"
"Shannon, my dear, I'd never hold a grudge for stealing my mark from me," the old pirate said with a smile.
I am, however, a bit offended just how amateurish your betrayal was. That bomb you left on my ship didn't even kill anyone.
Wasn't meant to kill anyone, old man. It did take out your engines, though, long enough for me to get the hell out of your little shit show of a fleet. So what, now you're here for vengeance or something? Decided to bait us out with those freighters?
Nope. As I said, I do not hold a grudge, though you could pay up for repainting the engine room. But never mind that, I'm here for something else. Some boys back home told me you got info about some fancy academy tech out there. Came to take it off your hands before it causes you a mischief.
Fuckers, I knew I couldn't trust my lads to train there. She turned around from the screen for a moment. Alright, whichever one of you dumb fucks couldn't keep your tongue on a leash, step forward so I can shoot you out of the airlock myself. And you, old man, even if I have this tech you talk about, what makes you think I'll just give it to you?
Nothing. But you wouldn't be giving it to me, I'm just a delivery boy here. See, I have no interest with whatever these eggheads are doing, but Kanta is very interested, so she sent me here to recover it.
As he spoke, the woman became more and more pale, and when the name of the dreaded pirate warlord was dropped, everyone could see a small bead of sweat forming on her forehead.
Kanta,
she muttered.
But how? I thought I covered all tracks when I left. As far as she knows, I'm dead.
Shannon, do you really think you convinced all of your lads to keep quiet? Look, I respect your willingness to cut loose, but you had to know Kanta never lets anyone out of her grasp. Some of your crewmates must have had second thoughts when you left.
So it would seem. But what the hell are you doing working for her? I thought she kicked you out. Handed your ship to some other captain.
She did. But you know how she is. One day you're Kanta's worst enemy, next day you are her lapdog. Believe me, I don't want to be here either, but it's either me or every single armada Den can spare right now.
So what? There are no battleships lurking in the cloud? Then what's stopping me from just running down your little fleet and blowing it to hell?
Good luck trying to find us first.
House smiled, knowing full well that Shannon had no idea where the call was coming from. Cat Logistics could have danced circles around her fleet inside that cloud, and she'd be none the wiser.
But even if you do and blow me up, do you really think Kanta will give up? Tell me, did she ever give up?
Shannon sat there quietly for a moment, but the look on her face was one of complete defeat. Suddenly, though, she steeled herself, looked back at the screen and said,
"No, I'm not giving you shit, House. Not unless you give me something in return."
Trade is a cornerstone of civilized society, from what I'm told. And I'm pretty sure we all would prefer to stay civilized here. So, what do you want?
I want out, House. For real this time. If you want what we found, you have to give me your word you'll tell Kanta I'm gone for good. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder all the time.
You will have to keep looking over it even if I do that, kid,
House said with genuine sadness in his voice.
You don't get out of this line of work, not as long as you're alive. But speaking of that, yes, I could tell the big lady we met you, barely scraping by on a handful of old small ships. You remained defiant to the very end, and we had to blow you out of the sky and recover the device from the wreck of your called-out flagship. Yes, that does sound relatively believable, don't you think? Hard to say if Kanta will believe it, because she doesn't believe anything in anyone, but it should keep her attention elsewhere for a while, as long as you make sure to never show your face anywhere in the core systems.
I won't do that. You can trust me on that, old man.
Shannon seemed relieved, but it was clear she wasn't sure it would work.
There are places out there where people like us can go to try and build themselves something new. Hope you'll never find ours, though. No offense.
None taken, kid. None taken. Now then, I gave you my word, for what little it's worth. Now your turn.
Sending the bloody thing already. I'll be honest, I've no clue what Kanta wants with it, unless she wants to ransom it back to Galatia. It's just some old computer shaped like a circle, but the bloody thing doesn't even work. Feels like it's missing some parts. This whole trip was just a massive waste of time. Lost a lot of fuel and lot of repair supplies to get this thing out from near that star.
At least Martin didn't come back from that salvage trip. Truth be told, I'm almost entirely sure he was the rat. Didn't do any work and ate rations for 4 people. Then be happy you'll never have to deal with him again, House said, but decided that Shannon still could use some healthy paranoia out there. Don't think it's over though, and keep an eye out for your guys. I doubt Kanta just had a single informant in your team. In fact, I know she has more. But thank you for your cooperation, Shannon. Just like bad old days. Now piss off and make sure we never see each other again. She flipped him off with both middle fingers and cut off the connection, but a few minutes later, a small automated cargo drone brought in a sealed container. It was indeed some weird machine, one that no one could really figure out, despite spending the next few days poking it. Eventually, though, engineers were recalled and the object packed up again for delivery to Galatian Academy, and it was finally time to get back. All jobs for the scholars were done, all objects of interest recovered. All there was left to do now was to get back to core systems, sell off all the cargo the fleet picked up during the trip, especially weapons found in the marine station, and get back to Galatia for a well-deserved reward, and to ask some rather pointed questions about the nature of the artifacts they recovered. But of course, not everything went according to plan. The first stop was Sudan, a planet belonging to Persian League, which apparently was currently suffering from a bit of organized crime. League forces were deployed all across the planet to deal with it, which meant that said organized crime was now very eager to purchase any weapons they could, so that they could be used to persuade the army to go somewhere else. It proved to be a very profitable transaction indeed, and local cartels were giddy with excitement to test out how their new hover tanks would protect their businesses. But cargo wasn't the only thing that left the fleet during that time. Martin, the survivor who was found nailed to the wall far away from the core, disappeared mere moments after the fleet landed to unload their cargo. Varuna and Zala were sent out to try and find him, but it was like he vanished from the face of the world. Most likely, he had friends or contacts here on the planet, ones that hid him safely away. Regardless, after a day of searching, he wasn't anywhere to be found, so the fleet decided to move on, hoping that his disappearance wouldn't bite them in the ass. So of course, before the week was done, it bit them in the ass.